Good afternoon, fellow classmates and Dr. Hinkson. This is Tabitha Hughes, and I'm here to discuss this week's discussion board topic, which is or concerns the pattern of scale in government and if that pattern actually factors into a government's ability to effectively operate and meet the needs of its population. I found this topic to be intriguing, especially after the research project that we were assigned for this class, where we had to choose an intellectual philosopher and kind of trace their thinking through a historical context. So, what I think I have discovered and have come to the realization about is overall the role of government, no matter what form it takes, is that it should be for the people. That is the goal of government, is to listen to the needs of its citizens, to take care of the citizens and the citizens' needs. So let's talk about what does that. What kind of government does that, and if scale really affects it. So I'm going to be using for my sources this week all of the work from Dr. Livingston. I find him quite fascinating, and I think his theories are quite fascinating. So I'm going to pull from the lectures this week, part 1 and part 2 of the lectures that dealt specifically with proper size and scale of political order in the modern state. So he talks about two kind of prevalent theories about size and scale of government. One, of course, coming from the ancient Aristotle, and then one coming from Thomas Hobbes. So I can say that my research in this semester class, or this 8-week term, was on Polybius, which was another ancient Greek historian, philosopher, political commentator. And Polybius also was influenced by Aristotle, who was influenced by Plato, who was influenced by Socrates. So, having said that, I've spent a lot of time in the ancient classics and the ancient works this semester. So, Aristotle believed that the best kind of government for being able to manage the people's needs and to effectively govern was a small republic. That republics, basically, a republic could be a constitutional republic with, the best of the monarchy, the aristocracy, and the people, but that it should be relatively small, so that it could take care of the needs of the people and govern effectively. The flip side of that is Hobbes, Thomas Hobbes, who was 17th century thinker, and Hobbes really takes kind of this look at government and says, oh no, if you have a strong central government, a strong central nation, then size doesn't matter. They'll be able to get the job done. Now, that's grossly simplified, but understanding that we have these examples that we can look back at in history. So we have examples of Sparta and Rome, who had these systems in place of eventual constitutional type monarchy systems. And both of them did relatively well as republics. Rome's problem was when it did away with the republic and became an empire. And so it's interesting to me that Hobbes says, oh, as long as you've got a strong central government, a strong nation, then it doesn't matter the size. It can be as big as it wants to be. But Rome paints a different story, because once Rome exceeded its bounds and boundaries of logistical ability to control is when we see the empire implode. So, I say all that to say this. After this work, I have come to the conclusion that the best kind of government is one that takes into account what the people need. If it's too big to do that, then it needs to be tweaked or it needs to be reworked, much like the founders did when they came back and realized the Articles of Confederation wasn't doing what it was intended. They came back to the drawing board, and what we ended up with was the Constitution. Now, I'm in no way bashing the American government, okay? But I do wonder, looking at trends and things that are happening in our society, if we may have kind of outgrown the setup as it is. Just like Dr. Livingston said in his earlier lectures and some of our earlier modules, that when the founders created our country, they kind of just assumed that eventually as it grew, it would separate. There would be some secession, possibly into three areas where you had an Atlantic area and a western area and a coastal area, but that there would be this friendly federated relationship, but not this united conglomeration that is as large as it is today. So having said that, I'm going to pull two of Dr. Livingston's articles, and we had to read them earlier on. The first one was The Very Idea of Secession, and the second one was The Southern Tradition and Limited Government. And I'll have to say that these articles were absolutely fascinating to me. They still are fascinating to me because history isn't taught this way. When you read these two articles, you almost get a different understanding of Abraham Lincoln. While I can totally respect the fact that he wanted to continue the Union, that he wanted the United States not to break apart, and what he saw as tarnishing, what the founding fathers had done, he acted illegally. The Southern states were totally within their rights to secede. And I don't know. I always knew that, but I don't know that I knew how entrenched that it was, that was an expectation, that Jeffersonian democracy, in fact, encouraged that if a state felt that they didn't belong anymore in the United States, or that they had an area had outgrown the United States. So I wanted to pull this first quote from The Very Idea of Secession by Dr. Livingston, and it says, "Foreign writers who studied the Constitution concluded that a state could legally secede from the compact being the American government or the United States. Tocqueville wrote, if one of the states chose to withdraw from the compact, the federal government would have no means of maintaining its claims either by force or right. Lord Brougham, in his magisterial 2-volume work on constitutions called Political Philosophy, which was published in 1849, concluded that an American state could legally secede. John Quincy Adams, just in 1843, so about 18 years before the Civil War, in his famous speech celebrating the Jubilee of the Constitution, went out of his way to argue that a state could secede. The Union, he said, was held together voluntarily by common affection and interest. Should that fail, then for better will it be for the people of the disunited states to part in friendship from each other than to be held together by constraint. So, thinking about what's going on in our country today, and of course, Texas has got some rumors floating that they're thinking of secession. This could become a very volatile, interesting topic in the days, weeks, months to come. From the Southern Tradition and Limited Government article that Dr. Livingston wrote, I pulled this quote because I thought that it kind of encapsulated history repeating itself. History is cyclical. And as Aristotle said, if you don't learn from history, you are doomed to repeat it. And as historians, I think that we can kind of see some of that happening. So this quote said, New England abolitionists argued that secession of the North from the South was the best way of eliminating slavery. And John Quincy Adams in 1843 signed a document declaring that the annexation of Texas would mean the dissolution of the Union. Jefferson said of the New England secession movements in his time, if any state in the Union will declare that it prefers separation to continue in union, I have no hesitation in saying, let us separate. So when 11 states seceded from the Union in 1861, they were following a well-understood American tradition. Abolitionist Horace Greeley said that in the New York Tribune, February 23rd, 1861, after the 7 states had formed the Confederacy, we have repeatedly said that the great principle embodied by Jefferson in the Declaration of Independence, that governments derive their powers from the consent of the governed, is sound and just, and that if the Cotton States, or the Gulf States only, choose to form an independent nation, they have a clear moral right to do so. Whenever it shall be clear that the great body of Southern people have become conclusively alienated from the Union and anxious to escape from it, we will do our best to forward their views. So that tells me that it was well understood pre-Civil War that secession was a viable option of controlling population, possibly controlling the size and the scale of government. So that brings me back to wonder, has America reached a size and scale that is too big to address the needs of the populace that it serves? Aristotle would certainly say so. Believers that follow his thought would certainly say so. I think it will remain to be seen how things continue to evolve in this very electrified political climate that we find ourselves living in today. Anyway, I hope that you enjoyed this presentation and this commentary. I've greatly enjoyed this journey with all of you, and I hope and wish you much success as you continue. Thanks.